Hey everybody, happy holidays. I hope that your Christmases were great. I hope that you have a good new year next week. In today's video, I'm so excited because we're going to be talking about my top 10 books of 2023. Excuse me. So, according to Goodreads, I read 80 books in 2023. This number is not quite accurate. Well, it might be a little bit fudged for one thing because I didn't start recording the books that I was reading until March. And so then I went back and I tried to remember all the books that I read in January and February. So there might be a couple that I overlooked or missed. I don't think there is, but there might be. It's also not quite accurate because I don't include on Goodreads the books that I DNF, which there were quite a few this year. And I also don't include the books that are rereads for me. And I'm actually reread quite a bit. It's kind of like a comfort thing to me to reread books. But when I reread a book, I don't put it on Goodreads, so those aren't going to be included in that count. So more than likely, I probably read closer to 100 books in total this year, but only 80 brand new reads, first time reads for me. So that's what I include on Goodreads. But for my top 10 list, I don't include rereads for that either. So these top 10 are still kind of based on the 80 that are in my Goodreads because I only do first time reads for me in my Goodreads, and I only do first time reads in my top 10 list. So, so what I do is I don't have a physical reading journal in a notebook. I just do it on my notes in my phone. I have a heading for each month, and then underneath that month's heading, I write each book as I complete it. So I have that in my phone, and when I read a book that I just love so much that I just know it's going to be in the top 10 at the end of the year, I put a little star next to it. So when I was getting ready for this video and I was going back through my notes and I was looking at my books, I actually only had 9 starred books. So for the 10th book, I had to go through my list and try to pick out books that were almost there. So yeah. So my 10th book is not actually a starred book for me, but it's a book that it was just almost there. So when I was looking through my list, I came out with 2 books that were almost starred, and one was The Rose and the Thistle by Laura Frantz, and the other one was Yours is the Night by Amanda Dykes. And I was going back and forth. I was like, okay, both of these were almost starred books. Which one do I think is better? And they duked it out a little bit, and Yours is the Night put up a really good fight, but in the end, it was just edged out by The Rose and the Thistle. So my number 10 book for 2023 is The Rose and the Thistle by Laura Frantz. It was just so good. I loved it so much. I love the story. I love the historical setting. It's so well researched. And it's Scottish, which can be fun. I don't read a whole lot of Scottish books, but I enjoyed it. So, number 10 was The Rose and the Thistle by Laura Frantz. Now, the next 9 were starred on my list, which means at the time that I read them, I knew without a doubt they were going to make my top 10 list. So number 9 is Set the Stars Alight by Amanda Dykes, which Amanda Dykes just has such a poetic way of writing. You read her books and it's like reading a story, but it's also reading song lyrics. She just has such a lyrical prose, it's unlike anything else in my opinion. It's just really, really good. And I love the story. I love the dual timeline. I love the characters and what they went through. It's just such a beautiful story. So that's number 9. Number 8 on my list is The Sound of Light by Sara Sundin. Sara Sundin is one of my favorite authors. I get her releases every year. I always pre-order her books. The Sound of Light it takes place in, I think, Copenhagen. It's Danish, and it's kind of it's a World War II novel, but it's kind of got a Little Mermaid kind of twist because the main male character, he rows across the Sound under the cover of darkness to deliver messages from Nazi-occupied Copenhagen to the Free Nation. I think it's Sweden is across the Sound. It might be Switzerland, but I think it's Sweden. I should know my geography better than this. But I think it's Sweden. So he rows across the Sound and he takes messages out of occupied Copenhagen to the neutral territories so that the resistance in the neutral territories can know what's going on in Copenhagen. And so he gets this like moniker of like the merman because nobody knows how these messages are getting out. They think somebody's like swimming them across, or they don't know what's going on. So they call him like the mermaid. So it's a little bit of mystery there. But it's so much fun, and I love Sara Sundin, always. So that's number 8. Number 7 is Guard Her Heart by Hannah Currie, which I was actually on the launch team back in October. It was just so good. It was like a Robin Hood style story. Not exactly Robin Hood, but like there was archery involved, and you have heard me say this on my channel before, but I love archery. I'm always down for an archery book. Plus the characters were just so like well-rounded. There were so many good themes in the book, and it was funny. It made me laugh. Like, it was just an excellent book, and I would recommend it, especially if I'm such like, I would call her newer author because this is her 4th book, I believe. She only has 3 books out before this, which are all in the same series. And I discovered her as a new author. Well, I didn't discover her, but I came across her as a new author. And so I've been reading her books from the beginning, and I've really watched her, like, her writing style grow. Like, the first book that I read of hers was The Heart of a Crown, or The Heart of a Royal, The Heart of a Crown, whichever one is first. And I remember when I read that book, I was like, it's not the best book I've ever written, but there's so much potential here. Like, I remember literally thinking, like, you could tell it was a first novel, but there was so much potential, and I know this author is going places, and she's just going to keep getting better as she's writing. And now her 4th book is in my top 10 list. So, I mean, like, I've literally seen her get better with each and every book, and it's just so good, and I can't wait to see what else she does and what else she comes out with. This might be her 5th book, actually, because this is the 2nd book in this series. Yes, this is the 5th book. I'm sorry. This is the 4th book that I've read, because I haven't read the 1st book in this series. I need to. But this is the 2nd book in the series, so this is her 5th book. Anyway, like, she's just made, I've seen so much progress in her writing, and it makes my heart happy, you know. So, number 6 is The Legacy of Longdale Manor by Carrie Turansky. This is a book that when I heard about it coming out months before its release date, I was like, I have to read this book. And it lived up to all of its hype in my head. I loved it so much. It's another dual timeline, and the modern storyline is great. The historical storyline is great. It's just so good. And yeah, that was, I haven't read any other Carrie Turansky's books. And like, honestly, off the top of my head, I don't know of any. Like, I don't know how long she's been writing or how many books she has. But I feel like I need to read more of her, because this was a really, really good book. Like, I'm gonna have to look her up on Fantastic Fiction and see about her bibliography, because I don't know. I don't think I've ever heard of her before this book, but it was so good. So that was number 6. Number 5 is Authentically Izzy by Pepper Basham. And I just discovered Pepper Basham this year. Authentically Izzy was the very first Pepper Basham book that I read, and I just got so hooked on her. Her books are absolutely amazing. Authentically Izzy, like, when I read that book, like, I saw myself in Izzy. She's just so relatable, and her romance is so good. Like, normally, like, an online romance, I'd be like, no, I'm not into it. But, like, her romance with Brody, so perfect. Like, and I loved it. And her having to overcome, like, her fears and her shyness and her insecurities, like, to be with him, so great. And, like, finding out, like, where she's meant to be in life, like, it was just so good. I loved it. I can't tell you enough how much I loved it. So that's number 5. Number 4 is also a Pepper Basham book, because, like I said, I discovered Pepper Basham this year. Number 4 is Hope Between the Pages by Pepper Basham, which this one is actually a dual timeline, and it was so much fun. Like, It takes place, it's kind of surrounding the Biltmore in Asheville, North Carolina. And I actually went to the Biltmore the summer of 2021, I think. Yeah. The summer of 2021, I went on a girls' trip with my mom and one of my old friends from college. There was actually supposed to be 3 of us, like, from college that went, but one girl dropped out, so I invited my mom along in her place. It was a lot of fun. We went to Tennessee and North Carolina, and we visited the Biltmore, and it's such a beautiful property. Like, it's so gorgeous. The house is gorgeous. The grounds are gorgeous. I loved the gardens. There's so much history there. And so after visiting the Biltmore in person and then getting this book this year and reading it and having that dual timeline, which takes place at the Biltmore in like the 1800s. Well, it might be like it's either 1890s or like really early 1900s. I don't quite remember. But like obviously back in the day, and then having a more modern storyline kind of in Asheville. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I loved both storylines. Yeah, it was just so good. So very good. That was number 4, Hope Between the Pages. Number 3 is Love Finds You in Annapolis, Maryland by Roseanna and White. And Roseanna and White has been one of my favorite authors for many, many years, but I've never actually read this book. It's one of her older ones, and also, if I'm being honest, the title kind of turned me off a little bit, like when I was going through, when you go through somebody's bibliographies or when you're looking at older books, sometimes you see a cover or a title and you're just like, I don't know. And for me, the title was a little bit of a turnoff in this one because, I don't know, I just felt like a book called Love Finds You in like this place. I just felt like it was like really cheesy, and it made me feel like the book might be a little cheesy. But I picked it up this year, and I'm so glad I did because it quickly became one of my favorites of hers. It's just so good. The storyline of second chance romance, like, it's so, so good. The character developments are so, so good. The side characters are amazing. I need a novel by itself for the side characters. Like, they're just so good, and I'm so happy that I looked past the title I didn't like and gave this book a chance this year. Because it made number 3 of my top 10 list, like number 3 of 80 new books I read. I mean, that's a big deal. So that's number 3. Number 2, and the last Pepper Basham on this list, is Positively Penelope. I loved Positively Penelope, and I know that y'all have heard me sing this book's praises again and again on this channel, so I'm not going to go into it a lot this time. But Izzy is who I am, but Penelope is who I want to be. And that's all I'm going to say because she's just amazing. Her storyline is amazing. Matthias is amazing. His daughter is amazing. The whole family is amazing. It's a good book. It made number 2 on my list because it's so good and I love it. I had a copy, quite a few of the books on this list, I have a copy here on my bookshelf. Positively Penelope, I had a copy of because I read an advanced copy on NetGalley and I loved it so much that I pre-ordered it after reading the copy on NetGalley. But then I wanted my sister to read it, so I sent it to her in the mail and it got lost in the mail. It never made it to her. So I hope that some post person out there is really enjoying Positively Penelope wherever it ended up. But yeah, I am planning on replacing my copy because it needs to be on my shelf. All of these books need to be on my shelf. So that is number 2. And now we get to number 1. The very best book that I read in 2023 is The Extraordinary Deaths of Mrs Kip by Sara Brunsvold. I loved The Extraordinary Deaths of Mrs. Kip. This is Sara Brunsvold's first novel, and it was just so good. And I wasn't expecting it because I really like to read a lot of like Christian romances and historical romances. I tend to be drawn towards the romances over the general fictions a lot. So when I first saw this book around and read the back cover, I was like, yeah, that looks really good. I'm gonna give it a try. But I did not expect to love it as much as I love my romances. But then I read it, and y'all, it made me laugh. It made me sob. I cried. Like, it was so inspiring. Like, I want to be like Mrs. Kip. She is just such an inspiring person and such a strong Christian, and like, I just can't even express how much I love this book. I mean, it's number 1 on my list. It is the best book that I read in 2023, hands down. Like, Sara Brunsvold's second book, it comes out in either January or February of 2024, I believe January, and y'all, I'm gonna get it. I'm so excited for it. And I mean, for me to have a general fiction, like all of this is Christian fiction, but to have like a general fiction rather than a romance top this list just tells you how great of a book this is, because like I said, I really am drawn more towards romances than anything else, but this book was just so good. It was just so good. And all I can say is, like, read it, guys. Seriously. You'll laugh. You'll cry. You'll get a warm, fuzzy feeling. You'll want to hug Mrs. Kip. It's amazing. It's such an inspiring story, and I loved it so much. And it's number 1 on my list. It is the best book that I read in 2023. And that concludes our video on the top 10 books of 2023. Thank you so much for going on this journey with me. I read so many amazing books in 2023, and there were so many that were close to being on this list and just didn't make it. But I'm very satisfied with my top 10, and I'm very satisfied with all 80 books, all 80 new books that I read and finished in 2023. I do have 2 books checked out from the library right now, and one of them I will probably finish before the year is over, but I'm like a third of the way in right now, and I'm like, yeah, it's not gonna make the top 10. It's good, but I already know it's not gonna make the top 10, so. And the second one, I probably won't finish it in 2023, but even if I do, it probably won't make the list. But if it does, I'll revise. I'll make an addendum on this video. I'll put it on my Instagram or something. But as it stands right now, these are my top 10 2023, and I'm pretty sure they'll stay that way. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video, and let me know in the comments what your top 10 books were. What books do you like the most? Have you read any of these and did you like them? Have you read any of these and are now thinking that I'm crazy for putting them in my top 10? I want to know, so let me know. Also, yeah, I will see you in 2024.